Hey guys, welcome back to the Nightmare. We're in Yarnum again, but today we're heading into the Nightmare realms, so buckle your seatbelts. Now when you use the tonsil stone for the first time, you end up in the Nightmare lecture hall. Now there's a lot of speculation as to what this building used to be back in the waking world. Some people think it came from Bergenworth, and other people think from the Healing Church. My personal opinion is that it actually is a building that was created by the Healing Church, and there's a couple of reasons I think that. First of all, you find a student uniform in the second floor of the building, and if you read the description it states that the Healing Church has its roots in Bergenworth and naturally borrows heavily from its uniform design. The focus not on knowledge or thought but on pure pretension would surely bring Master Willem to despair, if only he knew. And that description basically tells me that this was a student's uniform and that student was a member of the Healing Church. Also, if you go again to the second floor, there's a note that reads, "Master Willem was right. Evolution without courage will be the ruin of our race." Now, considering the fact that the Healing Church was founded on the difference of opinion between Lawrence and Master William on how the human race should evolve into the next stage of our evolution, it makes a lot of sense, at least in my opinion, that this was written by a member of the Healing Church who realised at a certain point, probably too late in their lives, that the way the Healing Church was going about things by imbibing blood was probably not in the best interests of that person or the human race in general. And I'd also go as far as to say that it was probably a building used by the School of Mensis, because the School of Mensis, as far as I'm concerned, is the arm of the church that was concerned primarily with imitating Bergenworth, which is to say that it was basically the intellectual arm of the church. Now, leaving the lecture hall, we find ourselves in the Nightmare Frontier, and this is an area that's even more interesting than the lecture hall, by far, I think. If you look around, it comes across as a very, very old area. There's a lot of graves, tombstones and shrines here. There's a lot of silver beasts, which a lot of people think are very, very old beasts. And you also just, you don't see much, the trees are all looking burnt and broken. There's really not a lot of life here, except for some really, really strange stuff. And a lot of people actually think that this area is Loran, and basically a part of Loran that's been pulled into the Nightmare, which was a really popular theory, but I'm not sure if I subscribe to it myself. And there's a few reasons for that. Now, as I mentioned in my Bloodborne lore video on the nature of the world and the different layers, you can actually see the ships from the fishing hamlet poking up from the clouds when you first come out of the cave in the area. And like I said in that video, that shows that the Nightmare Frontier is just above the fishing hamlet. But before I talk about that in more detail, I want to talk about something else for a bit. Everywhere in Yarnum you find the Wandering Madnesses, which are basically the Bloodborne's equivalent of the Crystal Lizards from Demon Souls and Dark Souls. I've always wondered what the story behind them was, and I never really looked at them in much detail until recently. If you look closely at them, you actually notice that they're basically just a amalgamation of heads that are just all stuck together with some appendages sticking out. Well, basically limbs and arms and legs. And that got me thinking back to the Madman's Knowledge. You always pick up Madman's Knowledge from, the heads of dead men. And what's interesting for me is the fact that when you kill a Wandering Madness, it drops cold blood. And what does cold blood do? When you use it, it gives you blood echoes. So I think that the Wandering Madnesses are probably the last vestiges of life or instinct from dead people, which are somehow, due to connection with the Great Ones perhaps, managed to cobble together an existence, which is why I relate them back to Madman's Knowledge, because they seem to be the remains of a skull without any Madman's Knowledge within them, and because they're human they end up dropping the cold blood, which you can use to gain more power. That's obviously a very speculative theory, but I think it's quite a cool way of looking at it. Now, going back to what this place actually is, you would have just noticed on screen that I was looking at Murgo's Loft from the Nightmare Frontier, and if you combine that with the fact that you actually access the Nightmare Frontier from the Nightmare Lecture Hall, which is, in my opinion at least, a Mensis building, I think that this area is very, very tightly coupled with the school of Mensis. But what do I mean by that? Basically, what I think is that this area was actually a part of Yharnam, on the outskirts of the city, that was used for Mensis experiments, stuff they couldn't share with the rest of the population. So they had to hide it away somewhere where no one would see it. And after some ritual, it was pulled into the nightmare along with the rest of the school. Now, one of my favourite YouTubers, JSF, has a video called Nightmare Fauna, where he basically talks about a lot of the creatures you find in Bloodborne. But there's two I want to focus on today. I'll link to the video in the description. You should go watch it. But he talks about two of the creatures you find in the Nightmare Frontier. The Crawlers and the Lost Children. The Lost Children are the giants that fling boulders at you, and the Crawlers are the octopus-looking creatures that you find in the Poison Lake. And a lot of people theorize that the Lost Children were probably slaves, basically, of the Healing Church that were created just to act as manual labor. But I really want to talk about the Crawlers, because if you actually watch his video, he talks about how the Crawlers seem to be an amalgamation of two different animals, with the top half being like a slug / octopus-like creature, and the bottom half being something completely different. But he also points to the fact that if you look at the central torso of the Crawlers, you actually notice that it looks like it looks to be in the shape of a pregnant woman. And that is really interesting, because when he actually made the video, it was before the DLC, and it was hard to explain what that meant. But now that we have the DLC and we know about what Kos looks like, I think we can put the two together, because to me the Crawlers look a lot like Kos. If you compare Kos with her pale slippery white skin and the horned ridges on her back to the Crawlers, it's very, very similar. And if you look at the appendages they have as well, it's very, very eerily similar to what Kos looks like. And if you combine that with the fact that we know that Mikolash, who's the leader of the School of Mensis, knows about Kos, he talks about her during his boss fight. My personal theory is that the School of Mensis was trying to recreate Kos for its own benefit. They know for a fact that Kos was related to the creation of the vacuous Rom, and because of that, they probably thought if they managed to recreate a creature similar to Kos, they might be able to achieve something similar. And the Crawlers seem to be failed attempts to do so. And perhaps if we take another step in that direction, we could theorize that the Lost Children were actually attempts to recreate the child of Kos. That's highly speculative, and there's not much evidence to suggest that, but I don't know, it could be true. But having said that, that all makes sense when you think about the School of Mensis and the connections between the Frontier and the different areas, with the fact that the Crawlers look a lot like Kos, and the fact that Mikolash knows about Kos. It all kind of fits together. But again, it's a highly speculative theory, so I can't say for sure. Now, the area boss is Amygdala, or Amygdala, depending on how you prefer to pronounce it. There's not a lot of lore that I've seen that really gives you a good idea of what the Amygdala is, or what its origins are, what kind of great one it is, or what motivates it. But I do think that it's closely related to the School of Mensis somehow. For one thing, it's you find it here in the Nightmare Frontier, which points to the fact that it is probably related to the School of Mensis because of the connections I just spoke about. But also you find it all over Yahogul. The lesser Amygdalas are found everywhere there. There's at least 4 or 5 of them protecting different. Well, they seem to be protecting it, because every time you go into different parts, they'll try and attack you with their insight attack. But regarding the boss itself, it's not really that hard of a fight if you know what you're doing. As soon as you enter the arena, the first thing you want to do is either go to his left or his right, and basically camp out just underneath his backmost arms, because that's where he's actually has most of his blind spots. If you stand in front of him, you're in a lot of trouble. But stay on his left side or right side, choose one. I always choose the left side, and basically just attack him from there. And having the long form of the axe is really useful at this point, because what it does is that the second attack of it in the combo actually is an overhead swing, and that makes your life a lot easier, because it can easily get his arms, and you'll get him 90% of the time if you just do that second attack. The first attack won't be as effective, but the second one will. And once you've staggered him like I just did, you can try the strong spinning attack as well. Also, if you stay here, he tends to get caught into a stamp animation, and that is very useful as well, because it just makes your life a lot easier, because he's not attacking you, he's just trying to stamp on your side. So obviously, like you see, I just use fire paper as well in this battle, because it's just gives you an extra attack. You can use bolt if you want to, but I just decided to use fire paper on this occasion. And that's pretty much my entire strategy for the boss fight. Just keep doing the same thing and you should be okay. The boss himself, he has, I think, 3 stages. So we're in the initial stage right now. In the second stage, he gets a bit more deadly, because what he does is he starts to use magic attacks. You know, he starts to fire laser out of his eyes, and he starts to jump around like he just did there quite often, and that's quite a dangerous attack, because if he gets you, he can pretty much one-shot you with that hit. But we should be okay in this fight. Once you get to the third stage, you can tell because he rips off his arms, and at that point he gets more aggressive, and on top of that, you definitely don't want to be in front of him, because if he gets you there, he has a lot longer reach and does a lot more damage. So like I said, just keep attacking him in the same way and you should be okay for pretty much the entire fight. So if you get hit like I just did, you've got to run away quickly, because he'll take most of your energy. It only takes a couple of those big hits to get you, and obviously if you get in front of him, he's going to do one of his heavy smash attacks, and those will definitely kill you in one shot. So stay out of the way of those as well. If he gets into a point where he's just randomly trying to flail at you, keep rolling around. That's the best thing to do. Don't try and get your energy back too often just by using the regain. It's dangerous. Use your blood vials. You shouldn't have to use too many if you do things correctly anyway. Yeah, I think it took me about less than a dozen tries, maybe 8, 9. But once I got into the rhythm, it really wasn't that difficult, and this fight wasn't that difficult in the end. Obviously you want to watch your stamina, be careful of that. I think I started to get a bit cocky towards the end of the fight, because I kept on rolling in front of him like you just see, but you really don't want to do that. Like I said, a couple of attacks can really nail you. Just keep doing the smart thing and stay on the side, and just keep wailing on the guy, and you should be done pretty soon. He does have a lot of health, so it takes a while. And that's it. It wasn't too difficult in the end. As usual guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. It really helps out small channels like myself. If you want to see more, subscribe. I've got loads of more Bloodborne and Souls content coming up. And if you want to talk about something, just leave a comment. Okay, cheers. Bye.